Okay. All right. So our principal topic for today is going to be Excel tables. But before we do tables, I want to go over with you a few other things that really relate to how you clean up your data. Because when you're going to start to do sorting and filtering in tables, if the data itself is kind of messed up, um, it's more problematic. Now, I will say that Excel tables are more forgiving than pivot tables, which we're not even going to cover in this series. So it might be okay, but it still looks for sloppy data. So let me start with just how you clean up your data. So what I have here, and I may even make it worse. Maybe I'll add one more mess up is, and what we're going to look at is the column that has all the names of the foods. And as you can see, it's a mess. Okay. Some of it is uppercase, some of it is lowercase. There's extra spaces, there's spaces between words. It's just a mess. So there are two functions that are going to help us with this. And actually there are more than two. I can actually show you three functions, but the most common one we're going to use is going to be proper. So there are actually three functions. So there's an upper, there's a lower, and there's proper. And I'll use the second one for this one because it's already uppercase. But if you do equals upper and just the link to the cell reference, it's going to make it all uppercase. And likewise, I can do the opposite here. This is already uppercase. If I do lower, that's going to make it lowercase. But the most common one and the one that we're going to use is proper. So what proper does is it capitalizes the first letter of every word. Okay. So in some cases here, there's only one word, but in other cases, like side salad, there's more than one. And it's going to uppercase each one. So I'm going to do proper. And I only have to do it for the first one. This is another one of those tricks. I can scroll down. But if I actually go to my corner and I double click, it'll scroll it all the way down to where the end of the list is. So notice how it fixed all of the issues regarding uppercase. And that's going to be great if you have names. Okay, so how many of you were familiar with that? Did you know that? It's called proper. Just give me a yes or a no so I know that you're with me. Okay. So the next one is trim. And what trim does is it gets rid of all the problems with spacing. So there are three basic spacing issues. It's a leading space. So an example of a leading space is what we have here over taco, where it's an extra space at the end. There's also called a trailing space, and they're almost impossible to see, actually. So a trailing space would be spaces after and then spaces in between. And what trim does is it gets rid of all those problems. So since we already did the proper, we propered. Okay. I'm going to create a verb. We propered. I'm now going to take that second column, the E column, and I'm going to apply trim. Okay. And once again, you wouldn't see anything here because there were no problems. But when we scroll down, notice that it got rid of all of the problems here, right? It got rid of the extra space in between, the leading and the trailing. It's all been cleaned up. So typically you're going to use both. You're going to do proper and you're going to use trim. Now you may be tempted at that point to get rid of the original. The problem is they're linked. Okay. So you have a last step that you need to do when you do this, and that is you need to go, and you could do it, usually you do it to the last column you've done if you do it this way. You're going to copy it, and then you're going to paste it. Now, I could paste it over the original, but I don't want to do it now because I want to show you one more thing. So I'm just going to paste it on itself over here. I'm going to go paste special value. So that means I'm getting rid of the formulas. It's just going to be the values. Now, once I've done that, then I could eliminate this column, okay? Or any of these items because it's not linked. So I'm actually going to get rid of these two. We're going to go back to our original. And we're going to talk about how to do it faster. Okay. And it's fine to do it that way, if you're more comfortable. But if you want to be, a little more advanced here, you can nest them. Okay. And it doesn't actually matter what order you do them. So I'm actually going to do them both. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals proper, open parentheses, then I'm going to add the word trim. I'm going to open the parentheses again. I'm going to select the cell reference. Now, one of the questions people always have here is how many closed parentheses. You count the function. So since there's two functions, I need two closed parentheses. And now I'm going to scroll down and I kill two birds with one stone. So I got it done. And again, here I could copy and paste it over. I'm still not going to do it because I want to show you one more example. So here I put proper on the outside and trim inside. Hold on one second. Yeah, hi. Can I call you back? Because I'm in the middle of working. I'll call you at about noontime.
Just wanted you to know it's done.
Okay, thanks. I'll call you at noon. Okay,
bye.
thanks. Bye. That's my car. Sorry about that. But anyway, so this is proper and trim. Okay. So I can do it the other way around and put the trim on the outside and proper on the inside. Oh, see, I messed up. Need a what? Extra parentheses. And I can scroll down here. I'm going to get the same result. So since I'm finished, now I can talk to you about what you could do. So at this point, these are all formulas, right? They're functions. So I can copy this and paste it over the original as a paste special value, and then get rid of this, column. And now I'm good. I got them all fixed up. So how many of you are familiar with trim and proper? I'm sorry, with trim, since you already said some of you proper was a first time. Did you know about trim? And just give me a yes or no. So typically you're going to do both, okay? And that's just a good way to clean up your data without a lot of work, okay? All right, one more thing before we go to tables, and that is I want to just show you two more functions that are good, that have uses, okay? So here, I'm not sure what would happen with names because it may not be duplicates of names, but as you can see here, I have multiple, because they're individual teachers. I have multiple high school, middle school, etc. What if I wanted to just have a list of all the different schools? Okay. So what I could do, actually, let me just add one more column here. just to make life easier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and I'm going to do equals unique. And I'm just going to scroll down my list. And notice what it did. It eliminated all of the duplicates. And that's what the unique function does. If you have anything where it's doubles, it's going to eliminate them. Now, this is what's called an array function. So the function's actually only in the top cell, but it populates it down. So a lot of times after I do unique, again, I'm going to do a copy and paste special and paste it value. So I get rid of the formula and I just have the amounts. Okay. So that's one. And that's kind of a cool function. By the way, that's one use of it. I'll just tell you, I'm going to describe another one. So I had a series of list of emails. They came off of different lists where people signed up for stuff. And some of them were duplicates because people signed up for more than one. So what I did was I put all of the email from the different lists into one column, and then I did the unique function, and it got rid of all the duplicates. So people didn't get duplicate emails. So it has some uses. How many of you are familiar with the unique function? Yes, no. Okay. So there is kind of a next step. Now you can actually include it in once you've done this. In fact, let me do it again as an array function so you'll see it. So, and it doesn't matter, you can do it for either. But I can do equals unique. And this time I'll do the different departments as opposed to the different schools. That's what I did before. Actually, it's what I did before anyway. Okay. So you see, I have these here. Okay. So what if I wanted to sort them? Hold on. I'm just doing it again from scratch. Okay, so there it is. So what I can do is nest this as well. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a sort. And again, remember our rules. If there are more than one function, you have to add another parenthesis at the end. And so now it sorted it in ascending order. Okay. Now I didn't have to nest. I could have made my life easier here. You know, these are the ones where I already I already had put them into values. So I can simply go here and do equal sort. And it's going to put them in ascending order. Okay, so that's another function. If you're doing an assort in ascending order, it's easy. If they're in descending order, you have a little bit more work. And that's what I want to show you next. Okay. All right. So let's go over here and we'll just take a look at this. So what I have here are all the salaries. And these have been assorted into ascending order. I can do it again. Okay. and they're in ascending order. So that's a shortcut. It's a shortcut. So I want to just show you the long version of that because you're not going to need it for ascending, but you're going to need it for descending. Okay. So the long version of it is you're going to do the range. You have to tell it what column because it could be multiple columns. So it's column 1, and then you have to indicate whether it's ascending or descending. And if it's ascending, you want to use a 1. If it's descending, you're going to use a -1. So here we're going to do a 1. And that's going to give you the same result. So what I like to say is this is well, I changed this now, but if you just leave it out and you're doing ascending, that's kind of the shortcut. If you're doing it the long form, you're indicating what column and the number, but you don't have to do that for ascending. Where you have to do it is for descending. Okay. And a lot of times when it comes to numbers, you want it from highest to lowest. Almost always with names, it's going to be lowest to highest. But with numbers, it's not unusual to want it to be the highest number first. So once again, I did it, but I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to do equals sort. I'm going to select my range. Comma, it's in the first column. It's only one column. And here I'm going to do a -1. And that's going to give it to you in descending order. So it's easy if you want to do ascending. If it's descending, you got to add the 2 other items. How many of you, it's not terribly difficult, but you just need to be aware. Most of the time, if you're dealing with anything involving text, names, departments, you're going to want it in alphabetical order. No one does Z to A. But with numbers, there may be situations where you may want to look at the highest first. Any questions on that? And how many of you were familiar with the sort function? Now, once again, the sort function is an array function, meaning that the number's actually in the top. So if you want to change that up, you would copy it down, paste value. And you could. Any questions? Anybody want to see anything again that we've gone over so far? Not super difficult. You just have to kind of remember it, or at least remember it can do it. Okay? All right. Everybody good? Give me a thumbs up or a yes. Okay. All right. So now we're going to look at Excel tables, which is amazing. All right. By the way, have any of you worked with Excel tables before? Give me a yes or a no. Okay. All right. So sometimes people think they have worked with it, but they haven't. All right. So the first thing I have to say is your data, so this is tabular data, but it's not an Excel table. Is your data filled in? Are there any blank rows or blank columns? If there are, you're going to have to select the range. You're going to have to pull the range down. If there are not, you can put your cursor anywhere. It doesn't matter. You can put it here, here, anywhere within the data set, it'll work. Okay. So I'm just going to randomly put it here. And so now I'm going to go to insert and I'm going to select table. Now it's going to ask, does it have a header row? It assumes I do. And as it turns out, I do. So let's just talk about what a header row is because there's all this terminology. So my top row here is not data, it's labels, right? It's year, school, whether it's electric or all. That's defined as a header row, okay? It's not a row with information, it's a row that, or it's not a row with data, it's descriptors. So in this case, there's a header row. So I'm just going to say yes. And the first thing that you're going to notice is it's going to color your data. Now, what color you get could vary depending on what was set before. That's kind of a nice color. I like that one. So what you're going to notice is if your cursor is inside the table, you're going to see another tab up top. If you're not, you won't. So people go, where's the table tab, or where's the, I think it has a slightly different name in on a PC, in Windows. But it's you'll see it. There won't be a table, there will. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to notice is the color options. So up top here, you're going to see there are all these choices. Some of them are hideous, some of them are nice, and there are more. There are like tons. Okay. I don't know. Love that. I like the one that I picked. That's pretty good, right? So one of the first questions is, how do you get the data out of a table? So the first bit of advice is, if you're going to get the data out of a table, remove the colors first, because a pain in the butt to get rid of the colors. Okay. So the way to get rid of the colors is, if you go to the very end, the last one is no color. It's still a table, but there's no color. And then if you want to convert it out of a table, you can kind of tell it's a table because you have these little buttons here, is you're going to go to the table tab and you're going to go convert to range. It's going to ask you, do you want to do that? And now it's back out of a table. Okay, so that's the first thing. How do you get it in and out of a table? So we're going to go back and do it again. We're going to insert it. We're going to create the table. So you get to see how to do that again. Okay, and so I like what do you think? You like that color? I think that's kind of a cool color. Okay, so a couple of things you're going to notice besides these filter buttons up top, and we're going to look at that, is something that is unique to tables, which is kind of cool. If you add an additional row directly below the last row, it'll add it to the table automatically. So here's an example, and I'm just going to create one more set of data, and we'll do it for 2024. Notice that it added it to the table, and you can see that it added it because these are in bands, so it added it, yet saw another band, and that becomes part of the table. So that can be really good if you have data where you're going to be adding additional stuff, because you don't have to redo your ranges. It's going to automatically add it. Now it has to be directly below. So if I put it over here, it won't add it to the table. It has to be right underneath. Okay, and once again, I can even do one more. So you can see that it adds the band. Okay. Now it'll do the same thing for columns. I don't want that, but it would do that. So for example, if I try to do it here, it won't work. But if I do it here, it'll add it to the table. And I'm just going to get rid of that. So that's one nice thing that you can do with tables. You can keep adding additional items. Okay, next thing. And you do have a lot of choices here. For example, you can just, hide your filter button if you just want to print this. But the one that I want to talk to you about that's significant here is the total row. Now you'll notice it's not by default enabled, and there's a reason for that, okay? If it were by default enabled, there'd be no room to add anything on the bottom. So it's not normally on. You have to put it on. So I'm going to select it. And when you do that, it always puts automatically almost like what looks like a grand total. It goes to the left hand, the most right hand column and totals it. And it automatically assumes it's a sum. Okay. But what if I wanted it here as well? I can select it. And I have the option of picking other things without having to know any formulas. So, for example, I could say, give me the average, or just count the items. And many more, minimum, max, without you having to know it, knowing the formulas. And these are not sums. These are subtotals. And I want to talk to you about the difference between a sum and a subtotal. Okay. So for the time being, I'm going to leave that in. All right. And down below over here, I'm going to do the sum. And I can be lazy and just scroll across. Now you'll notice those are the same, but they won't be the same forever. Okay. And that's what takes us to our next thing. And by the way, let me just go over one more thing with you, even though I'm going to take it out. Okay. So what if I wanted to add an item on the bottom? There's no room. So what I do is I go to the table, I get rid of the total. And then when I'm finished, I turn it back on and it's going to remember the numbers. Okay. Got it? All right. So if you have enabled your totals and you realize you have to put another item in, just take them out temporarily, add the other row, and then reselect total and automatically put it on the bottom. Okay, so there are two basic things that you can do with a table. You can sort, like ascending or descending, or you can filter. So I'm going to actually start with filtering first. Okay. And there's different kinds of filtering. We're not going to get too crazy here, but let's filter. Okay. So there are 4 columns here. 2 of them are numerical and 2 are descriptors. This looks numerical, but it's not, it's years. Okay. So I'm going to start with the schools. Okay. Because that's a descriptor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the ribbon and you're going to see that all the schools are listed, or all the locations, because the bus garage is technically not a school. So let's say that I only wanted to look at my high school and middle school. So notice it filtered the data. Everybody with me? And I hope your head hasn't exploded yet. So I filtered the data. Okay. So the way that it filters is it hides the rows. So if you look at the numbers here, it goes 7, 8, doesn't start at 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, here, because they were next to each other, you're seeing that. Let me give you like another example where they weren't. So let's say I had the bus garage, the middle school, and Smith School. So notice here that I start at 11, and then 13 to 17, they're hidden. And then 19 to 22, they're hidden. So it only shows the ones, it hides the others. Okay. So I'm going to undo it and show you something interesting. So when I undo it, I'm selecting all. Notice that these totals are the same. The sum and here are the same, but let's look at what happens when I filter. And this time I can just do middle school, high school. So my middle school, high school is 130 and 177, but these numbers haven't changed. So the answer is why. The reason why is that sum includes hidden rows and subtotal does not. Okay. And in fact, if you even click this, you'll see it says subtotal. Okay. So I don't want to explode your head with this, but there is a subtotal function and it's a catch-all function. So what you have to do, if you just wanted to do subtotal alone, which you're not going to have to do, which is great because it does it for you. So what I'm going to do is, let me unfilter it first just to show you, because I'm not sure what's going to happen if I try to do it while it's filtered first. It probably would be okay, but, and again, you don't even need it, but just so you understand what's going on here. So I'm going to do equals subtotal. And subtotal is a catch-all function. So the one that you need for summing is 109. And then I'm going to select my range. And right now it's unfiltered. I can move this over. See it. So watch what happens now when I filter. So the sum is 383. The subtotal are the 130, 500, and the 77. So what you're actually doing is if you want to ignore the hidden values, you have to use these. And I say it's a catch-all because there's a different code for each thing of what you're doing, whether it's min or max. There's only one subtotal. Since the most common is sum, most people remember it's 109. But you don't have to worry about this because if you use the tables, it does it automatically. Tables will automatically not cover the hidden rows. Okay. Any questions on that? So that's why you don't want to use sum, and you don't even have to worry about it if you do it this way. Those are the totals for just the two schools. Any questions? No head exploding yet? Okay. Now you can do multiple filtering. So for example, I'm going to do all my schools. And then I'm going to go over the years and I'm going to say I just want 2021. And now that's going to give me my data for all my schools just for that year. Now you can always tell if your data is filtered, because if it's unfiltered, it's going to look like a down uh, triangle. If it's filtered, you're going to get what is the filtered icon. And notice when I change this, that's now unfiltered. And the same thing here. If I select all, that's unfiltered. Okay. I haven't made your head explode yet. Okay. So one more thing that I want to show you here, and then we're gonna look at a couple of examples. Okay. Okay. So there is something called a slicer. And you can select, by the way, let's just talk about this. So I could filter the numbers that way, but it wouldn't really make any sense because it's just going to give you an individual number. Here, they're descriptors, so they don't work with numbers. I am going to show you how to filter numbers, but not yet. Okay. So you can create a slicer for any of the items on the header row, but the only ones that make sense are year and school. Okay. So once again, I'm going to go into the table tab. I'm going to go insert. It's going to give me a list. This is just a duplicate of the slicers. You do have to create each one individually, but I'm going to go and I'm going to do school. And I'm going to get a slicer. Now, it's interesting. When you're in a table, you get a table tab. When you're in a slicer, you get a slicer tab. And once again, I can change the color. I can even decide I want 2 columns if I want. You know, if I had like a lot. Okay, that color's got to go. I like that one. All right. And again, I can narrow it down. So there's my slicer. Okay. So slicer is another way to filter. It's just a different way. Kind of like if people have like switches, there'll be like an upstairs and downstairs light switch, and it doesn't matter which one you hit, they both work. So that's kind of like this. Okay. So anything you do with the slicer, it will be the same as doing the filtering. So let's say I just want to look at my data from my high school. I could just click high school. If I want to clear it, I go up here. If I want to do more than one, I have to hold down my control key. So let's say I wanted high school and middle school. I would then hold that down, and then now it gives me the two. Okay. Any questions on that? So it's not different because if you notice, it does the same thing. And if you actually open this up, you'll see. Okay. Which ones it picked. Okay. Actually, I think it did the opposite way. It picked everything but those. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, notice that they've been now selected. So what happens if you eliminate your slicer? Does it reset? The answer is no. So if I get rid of the slicer, it's still the way it is. So no panic. I could always go in and reset it here, right? Or I can just enable the slicer again. So if I go into my table and I go insert slicer for school, it's going to put it back and it'll be where it was in terms of selections. So now let's add one more slicer. And that's for years. And this is why I really like slicers. I think it's really cool if you're presenting data at a meeting to have slicers because it's kind of cumbersome to go into these tabs. So let's say that I said, okay, let's look at central office and bus garage for 2022. So I could go here. I'm going to go 2022. bus garage and central office, there's my data. So then I go blah, 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 blah. That's my data for central office and bus garage. Now let's take a look at the high school and the middle school. That's my high school, blah, blah, blah. And then I could say, let's take a look at the elementary schools. So I think it moves kind of elegantly, especially if you're presenting data in a meeting. And I think it's a nice way to do the filtering. What do you think? You like it? Okay, we're good so far. Now, the other thing that you can do, I'll reset this and reset this, is I can also put my data automatically in ascending or descending order. So now I've just alphabetized my various schools in ascending order, or I could switch it to descending. And that's the other option. Okay. All right. So what if I wanted to sort by like electric or oil? So you can't do the traditional sort here. It's not going to work because filtering, it's not going to work. Okay. You could definitely put them in ascending or descending order. Okay. And by the way, since it affects the whole table, when you do ascending in any one column, it affects all the others. You can only actually do it for one column or descending. Okay. But what if I wanted to filter? Like, as I said, doesn't really, you really can't filter this way. But what I can do is filter and use like a logical operator for the filtering, anything greater than a certain number. And when you do that and you pick greater than, you're actually going to pick one of the numbers that's already there. Okay. So all it's doing here is giving you a list of all the numbers. So if I want it that had already been selected, so let's say anything greater than 17,000, it's then going to just show me those. So you can filter, but you can only filter greater than, less than. By the way, if you want to clear those, just go to where it says greater than and do choose one, and that'll automatically reset it. Everybody okay so far? No head exploding? Okay. All right, so let's look at one more table. It's just a little bit more advanced table, so you can just get an idea, and we have a little more data to work from. So here again, we have school. I just use last names for the employees. And I'm just going to widen the column so you can see the amounts. And you know what bargaining unit they're in. Okay. So we have a little bit more to work with here. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to create some reports. Okay. So first thing we said is if we want, we have to convert the data to a table, right? And once again, we'll just look. Yeah, it's all filled in, so we can put our cursor anywhere. We can go to insert and do table. Does it have a header row? Yes. Okay. And so now we have our data in tabular form. Okay. So let's say that I wanted to create a admin report, just an admin report, all the admin salaries, okay, and benefits. So what I can do is I can go to the filter and select admin. Now, what I am going to do now is I'm just going to do total row. Remember, it always puts the total in the left-hand column, but I don't really need that. That's just totaling the years. So I just say none, and I just go to the ones that I want. So I want some, and I want some, okay? And that gives me my salaries, okay, for my admin. So what I'm going to do, and this is really interesting. So this has been filtered. So when you take a table that's filtered and you copy and paste it, it's no longer a table. And it's only going to include it's not going to include the hidden stuff. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it, including the total. And I can do it down below. We'll just put it down over here. Okay. And I'm going to paste it. Now notice the color remained, but it's no longer in the table. There's no more tabs. And I've got my data. It's been totaled. Okay. Now, if I actually left out these totals because it just shows it as raw amounts, I could have just used some and put them back in, but it's fine the way it is. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, admin staff. You get fancier and prettier here, but you get the point. I just put a title up. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to go back to my original table. And by the way, I see an error. Okay, which I should have fixed before. So I have both class and classified. Okay, so that means I must have, they should either be all class or all classified. So a good way to, by the way, fix that is to pick the one you think there may only be one of them. And change it. And now when you go to the bargaining units, you shouldn't see it anymore. And that's perfect. Okay. So that's just a way that you might deal with an error where maybe you abbreviated one and you didn't the other. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a classified report. Okay, so these are all my classified staff, and this is the table, but I don't want them to all look the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to, I like purple. So we're going to make that one purple, and I'm going to copy that. And paste it. And now what I'm going to do over here is say, so now we have an admin staff. Oh, we got to make this the same size. So what was that? That was 26. So let's make this 26. I mean, we got to have it look consistent, right? I mean, otherwise it would be a sloppy report. So now let's do a faculty one, right? So I'm going to go back to my original table. I'm going to reset it. And this time I'm just going to pick faculty. And we don't want to use the same color again. That wouldn't make for a very nice report. So let's see. Let's see what our color options here are. It's not my favorite, but okay, let's do the green. Once again, notice once you paste it, it's no longer a table. Okay. I just go to 26 right away. There we go. And there we go. We now have our three reports all pulled off the one table, all easy breezy and pretty. So what do you think? Like it? Give me some feedback here. Now, theoretically, there's another way you could have done, but it would have left it in tables. You could have copied the original table and filtered them three different times, down below. But I like the fact that when you take filtered data and you paste it, it just gives you that data. And you don't have all the filter tabs to get rid of them or anything. So it does make it look nice. And once again, here's just another example of doing the same thing, same idea. Okay. All right. So I think I'm just about done. We're done. It's unusual that we're done early, but so let's see if I can figure out anything else to show you here. Well, I do again want to emphasize that you can get other information. So for example, and maybe this is a better one to show you from here. Okay. And I'm going to unfilter this. All right. So what if I wanted to know how many employees I had? So I can always do a count, and that tells me there are 38 employees, right? And that's unfiltered. But if I now went in and said, okay, how many admin employees are there? That's going to be 17 admin employees. Okay. So this is a little bit more work because you would have to do these one by one. And we're going to learn next time another way to do this. But let's say that I needed to know, get a count of how many admin staff there are, how many classified staff, how many certified staff there are, faculty. Okay. So we're going to focus on the count here. All right. So the first one I did is admin. And what I'm just going to do down here is I'm just going to do admin, classified. That's strange. Faculty. So what I'm going to have to do is copy them and paste value because every time I refilter, it's going to change the number. So if I just did a link to this and then I filtered it, that number is going to change to reflect the next group. So this is going to be wrong down here. It's saying 9. Okay. So what I have to do is not do it that way. So let's go back to admin for a moment. So admin was 17. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do copy and do a paste special. You're going to see a lot of paste specials values. That's the most common paste special. Now I go up and I can refilter for the next item, which is going to be just my classified, which was 9. We saw that before. And once again, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste special values. And then I'm going to go back and do same thing with faculty. That's 12. It's a very small school. Okay. And paste special values, right? And just as a check, I'm going to sum this. Oops. So that's 38. So what's my check if I unfilter this, I should get 38. This is where I cross my fingers. And notice I have 38 down here and 38 up here, so I know that those counts are accurate. Okay. Any questions? So there are lots of ways where you may be using tables where you actually want to do counts. I had a whole bunch of data that were surveys with people having like 3 or 4 different responses, and I wanted to be able to figure out the response, the percents on the responses. So I used the tables, I filtered, I got the data for each one, and then I just did the percents, which is easy enough to do. Okay, so tables are really handy. And once again, remember, you have the options with the tables to have it do any of the other calculations without you having to know any functions. So if I wanted the average salaries and benefits, I could do that. Or if I wanted the average salaries and benefits by unit, I could do that. Okay. So it's very handy and you don't have to know a lot. You don't have to know any functions. It does it all for you. Okay. All right. So I am done. So I'm going to shut off the